We are to continue our study of CSS, and in this session we'll talk more about Sass. And in particular, I want to look at Sass's nesting rules, which give you they're a new way to write CSS, right? And Sass allows kind of a more flexible syntax than is in the original CSS. So what am I talking about here? Well, oftentimes when we write CSS rules, what we do is we write one rule with a selector that points to something, like in this case, something with the class name Lotus. And then we'll write another rule that points to a child or a descendant of something with the same class name that we wrote earlier or the same selector that we used earlier. So in this case, the div is a child of Lotus. Okay, so Sass gives us a nesting rule, and the thing about this is here we've written one rule, but below it we've written another rule that basically fits inside this one. You know, like all the divs have to be part of this guy. So, but these are written as two separate blocks, right? So Sass is going to give us this nesting syntax, and what it is it says that you can put a rule with a selector inside of another rule with a selector. And what will happen is here, when it takes this rule apart and writes it, it'll write it as a descendant. Okay? So this rule will be written in this way. Okay? And that means, you know, like we can read visually that this belongs to the thing here, right? So let's give it a try, right? Now notice here I wrote this as a child selector, and so using the example here, I would get a descendant selector, right? So this is going to be a little bit different. It'll still work in our case, but I'll show you how to get the child selector also if that's a requirement. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to write this div here inside of Lotus. So I'll write the whole block here, and then what I'll do is I'll take all of this code here and move it into this block. Okay, and we can see the Lotus still works. And when I look at the code now, what's going to happen is you'll see that it's written Lotus here, and actually it wrote it kind of weird, but essentially, you know, it gave me something like this, right? Let me format that, right? So it wrote the Lotus block, and then it wrote the Lotus space div block, or descendant div, right? So it wrote this one, okay? But in our original code, we nested this one inside the other one, okay? So that's a little different because it's not a child selector. It's as if we had written it this way, right? So, you know, and with the child selector, it means that this div needs to be a descendant, like an immediate descendant, as opposed to, you know, anywhere inside. So in other words, the child selector, right, if I was to do this, right, Lotus child div selects all of these divs. If there were another div inside one of these inner divs, this one is not selected. If I take this out, then it selects all the divs here, including this one, right? Because this one is not an immediate child, but it is a descendant. Okay, so no matter how many levels you go down, it's going to find a div and apply the rule to it. If I put the child selector in here, then it's only the first level. So if we start at Lotus, then immediately inside the Lotus element, we look for the divs. So this one is excluded in this case. So in our example, let's actually get rid of that, right? And go back to what we had, right? And in our example, you know, I'm using the child selector. So if I still want to use that here and I think it's something important, then what you can do is you can do the ampersand and then put the child here. Okay, so now when I save this, we're going to rewrite our style CSS, And now when I look, you can see it gave me Lotus child div. So you can think of the ampersand as starting at the root block for any nested element. You know, and essentially it's kind of like it's taking this thing and putting it here, okay? So this is really useful in some cases because I think reading this you can see that this is really a child here, and it kind of groups those rules together. So it is a little different though from regular CSS, okay? So what else can we do with this, right? Well, actually I'll leave it up to you to solve, and then you can stop the video and try this on your own. But what if we wanted to take these blocks and put them inside here, right? And we could do that because this thing right here is still Lotus child div, and actually this nth child could be written inside here too, right? With the ampersand in front of it if we put it inside the div. So I'll leave that for you to try. Try incorporating these two for loops into the Lotus block. Okay, so how did you do on that one? Let's go over the solution that I came up with, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this thing. Actually, I'm just going to cut it, and I'll put it in here. And now I can get rid of Lotus and just put the ampersand here, right? And there we go. We got our Lotus still animating, right? And then I can take this one, cut it, and I want to make sure that I'm careful about the curly braces, right? Because I want to be inside this curly brace and not in one of these other ones, right? So I'm going to go like right in here and paste this guy, and then I'll change. Actually, I guess I don't even need to change it. Actually, you know what? I made a mistake. This actually doesn't even need to be in there. I forgot. I guess I was getting ahead of myself there. But anyway, yeah, this block doesn't even need to be in there because it doesn't even have any of the selectors. So actually we can leave that guy alone. So my error there. But anyway, so hopefully that was an interesting look at the nesting in Sass. Actually, let me add as a bonus item, we could rewrite this. This might look a little bit awkward though, so I actually kind of like this one the way that it is now, but actually this nth child thing is a child of div here, so it's possible, or it's not a child, but it's like it's kind of connected to that div selector. So actually, if we arrange this in this way, and then we take these things out here and place them here, ampersand, and then colon nth child, right? This should be the same situation. Actually, I guess I made a mistake there. Maybe I got to take out that space. Yeah, there we go, right? So this actually is the same situation because this nth child is connected to div, so the ampersand right here kind of represents the selector that we have up here, right? And this ampersand represents the selector that's at the top here. Okay, so anyway, so maybe that gives us a look at nesting rules in Sass, and then also the special ampersand operator that they give us. So thanks for watching, and I hope that that's helpful and makes you write better style sheets.